Here we go.
Yippee-ki-yay, and welcome to another episode of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of the epicreview.com. That's thepicreview.com. We are coming to you live from the Nakatomi Plazas of North Carolina. I'm Brad Bell, and joining me today, as always, is
Jerry, Mr. Falcon Reed, also known as Barbecue 17.
As always, you can email any questions or comments you might have regarding the Confirmed Epic Podcast or the Epic Review in general to thepicreview@gmail.com. We are also glad to have Jim Waz Collector's World in Gastonia, North Carolina, back again sponsoring another edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. As we stated last week, the place where Jerry and I go for all of our comic and a lot of our collecting needs. Right, Jerry?
That is absolutely correct.
And just to let you know what we have in store for you today in this Confirmed Epic Podcast. First, Jerry and I will be getting into what we've been checking out this week. Then we'll cover the epic news items of the week. And then we will get into a full-on review, both spoilers and non-spoilers, of A Good Day to Die Hard, the latest installment in the Bruce Willis Die Hard series. So, Jerry Reed, let's just go ahead and get to it. What have you been checking out this week?
Okay, well, I guess for my reading stuff this week, I've actually gotten into two books that I've had for a couple months now and just started reading. They're both by Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden. They're his illustrated novels.
And it's Mike Mignola of Hellboy fame.
Of Hellboy, BPRD, Amazing Screw on Head. The first one's called Joe Golem in the Drowning City, and that's the one I've been reading right now. It actually came out, I think it's been out for over a year. But so far, it's a really great story. If you like a lot of Mike Mignola's stuff, you'll probably enjoy it. I mean, it's a novel. It's written, but throughout the book, it has really cool, illustrations by Mike Mignola. So I've been reading it. I'm not real far into it yet, but I'm definitely enjoying it. And so far, I would recommend it.
So, Jerry, just for those of us who really aren't familiar with, what is the difference between this kind of illustrated novel and your typical graphic novel? As if, say, we picked up a Mike Mignola Hellboy. What's the difference?
Sure. An illustrated novel simply is that it's a novel. It's a book. I mean, it's mostly words. It's black and white. But it does have illustrations in it from time to time. It has some really cool character illustrations. So if they're talking about a character, or an object, some kind of weird arcane artifact someone's using, you're actually going to see a little Mike Mignola illustration of it. The second one, which I'll be reading right after, is Father Gitano's Puppet Catechism. Same team, Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden. This one just came out, I think, in October, November. Like I said, I got it for Christmas, but I'm flipping through. You can't see it, but Brad can. As you're reading it, you'll see that, there's pictures in it and stuff that are just, Mike Mignola's usual really cool art. So.
And you mentioned, is that Brian Golden?
Christopher Golden.
Christopher Golden, excuse me. Now, is he providing the story, or is he providing additional illustrations?
I think he writes. I think he does more of the actual writing himself. I think Mike Mignola does this, kind of comes up with the story and comes up with and does all the illustrations.
Because with Hellboy, Mike Mignola did some writing as well as some illustration.
Mike Mignola does a lot of writing. He writes a lot of his own stuff and typically, does his own artwork.
And we are big fans of Mike Mignola here at the Epic Review. We had a chance to meet him at Heroes Con.
Yeah, I've met him twice. At both years I've been to Heroes Con so far. And he's really a very nice guy.
He kind of has that artist vibe, but he still is willing to talk to you like, most of the writers are at these conventions.
Well, two things I saw. One, the first year I went, I selected, I don't like to do the whole, I'm going to bring every comic book I own and have you sign it.
Same here.
So I said, okay, I'll have him sign my, my first Hellboy trade paperback, I'll have him sign my first BPRD trade paperback, and I'll have him sign my copy of Gotham by Gaslight. So I'm waiting in line. This dude in front of us pulls up with one of those little suitcase type things that, folks have at the comic shows that have all their books in it. And he just starts unloading Hellboy books. Just tons of Mike Mignola stuff.
He also had the DVDs for him to sign as well.
He didn't have the DVDs, but he had a whole pile of books. I mean, there had to be 50 or 60 books there. I'm not kidding. And he just lays them out. Mike Mignola goes, "Oh, back again, huh?" And Mike Mignola signed every darn book this guy brought. I was like, oh my gosh.
And that's pretty awesome. In my experience, the writers will lend themselves to do that more than the artists will at shows, because a lot of time at these shows, artists are, not that I have not met some great artists. Mark Bagley comes to mind as
Chrissy Zullo was really nice. We met her.
But
so.
I just... Only point is a lot of times the artists kind of want to do those sketches to get a little revenue coming in, whereas the writers, man, they are really there for the fans.
Yeah.
So, and we mentioned Heroes Con. For those of you that don't know, that is a comic book convention in Charlotte. This year is coming up between June 7th, 8th, and 9th. And they're going to have some great guests such as Jason Aaron and Matt Fraction, and Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, and Charlotte puts that on, and they do a fantastic job.
It's a good show. It's one of the most fun comic book shows to go to. And
it's garnered wide attention over the past couple of years. Heroes Con is pretty much known now as one of the last remaining comic book conventions.
Yeah, there's not all the other entertainment stuff that they kind of have at other conventions. I mean,
if it's there, it's very sparse.
Yeah, I mean, it is about the comics and the artists and the fan interaction. So,
and it's one where you don't have to wait in line 5 hours unless you're gonna meet somebody like Stan Lee. If you're gonna meet the Matt Fractions and the Jonathan Hickmans of the world, you wait maybe 30 minutes.
Oh man, I had a great conversation with Bill Willingham. I mean, the guy who. I mean, Fables has over 100 issues, multiple spinoffs, and he was just sitting there, the most entertaining, nicest guy that I've met at some of these conventions. And I've met a lot of very nice folks, so it's great. I got to meet Earl Norham, who was just... Earl Norham is an artist. He's probably in his 80s now, but he did a lot of Masters of the Universe art, just beautiful painted art. And I have some old Golden books that he did the art for Masters of the Universe. And I just had a chance to chat with him and his wife and just, tell him how neat these illustrations were to me since I was a kid.
And that's just an experience you don't get at a WonderCon or San Diego Comic-Con. And we will be talking more about that as summer approaches.
Absolutely.
And we will both be going to Heroes Con this year.
Yep.
So, all right, Jerry, I'm going to get into the big thing that I've been checking out this week. And that is the Lethal Weapon film franchise, all four directed by Richard Donner. Jerry Reed, I've never seen any of these until the past week.
I'm glad that you finally rectified that.
I'm very
You go
glad.
and see these movies when I'm 2 days from retirement, Brad. What's the deal?
I'm getting too old for this shit.
I know. All right, let's do it.
I gotta say, I picked these up at my local Walmart, got all four of them for $10 on DVD, which was an unbelievable steal. What actually made me want to watch this franchise, ironically, is an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia in Season 6, where they create Lethal Weapon 5, and maybe a little bit offensively so, they use blackface to render Murtaugh.
Oh, gosh.
And it is... I love It's Always Sunny. It's freaking hilarious. Great episode. But I will always be thankful to that show forevermore for introducing me to the Lethal Weapon series. So there's just so much to say about this series. This was the series, it defined the buddy cop genre.
Oh, I definitely think so. I mean, it's probably the best example of that genre that's out there.
And one of the things I really love about it is it's the perfect blend of action and comedy. Even though we have the hilarious laughs of an all-out comedy, it feels like a huge Hollywood blockbuster. And that is in big part to Danny Glover and Mel Gibson's famous portrayals of Roger Murtaugh and Martin Riggs as LAPD officers, sergeants, and detectives, and even demoted to patrolmen once in the series.
3 or 4.
Lethal Weapon 3. they're demoted. So, and this series spanned 10 years. It went on from 87 to 97. And what I found interesting as I was going through the series, the first 3 films are very good crime movies. Riggs and Murtaugh squaring off against drug runners, weapon runners, and things of that nature. But the 4th one, so very interestingly, it ended up being my favorite, and it turns this franchise...
Lethal Weapon 4 is your favorite?
It ended up... I know that may sound like blasphemy. I say the first 2 are the best films, but the 4th ended up being my favorite because we take this crime, comedy, action movie, and it becomes an all-out kind of kung fu movie when you bring Jet Li.
You do bring Jet Li into that, and that tends to happen.
Yeah, and he was amazing, and this movie has so many great, the franchise has so many memorable scenes and quotes. My favorite scene out of the 4 was the toilet scene. And Lethal Weapon 2, where Murtaugh is, for those of you who hadn't seen the movies, who is on a toilet seat with a bomb about to go off.
Yes, that is a good scene.
It's just a very intimate look into the relationship of Riggs and Murtaugh, and I just found it hilarious. And there were just so many quotes in these movies that I'm going to take with me. For example, in the first movie, there's a scene where Murtaugh is getting interrogated in one room and Riggs is getting interrogated in another room, and Murtaugh's daughter is also being held captive. And one of the bad guys says something to the effect of, "Don't you know there are no more heroes left in this world?" And all of a sudden, such a badass way, Riggs busts through a brick wall to save the day after going through a horrific torture scene. You remember this scene,
That
Jared?
one's rough. Is that the one where they use like the water squeegee or something and shock him?
And man, when you're sitting there, you're like, yes, this was made in 87, but it's just such an unbelievable, torture scene.
I think one of the best parts of that movie is when Gary Busey... Just to show, how tough Gary Busey is, the boss just is like, stick your hand out. And he sticks his arm out, and the boss just holds a lighter up to the guy's arm until he tells him, like, okay, pull your arm away. And the guy's like, yeah, that's how tough my guys are and how obedient they are. It's like, holy crap.
I also love at the end of the second one, they're facing a guy who uses pretty much his power as a diplomat and diplomatic immunity as a kind of a cover for some drug operations. And at the end, he's pretty much teasing Murtaugh, and he's like, you can't shoot me, I've got diplomatic immunity. And what's the line?
Consider it revoked.
It's either consider it revoked or it's just been revoked.
Yeah.
And in that epic Danny Glover, I mean, it's just, oh man, I absolutely love that scene. And just so many things that we may consider cliche now, but that this franchise kind of
fresh. They were fresh.
That was fresh at the time.
Yeah, it's just been revoked. I'm pretty sure they referenced that in the Family Guy episode where Stewie tries to kill Lois and then Lois has to kill Stewie.
Yeah.
They use that, and Peter just uses it way out of context. It's just been revoked.
A perfect example of this is in the third one. They're about to finish off the villain, and the villain tells Riggs, go to hell, and Riggs is like, you first.
Yeah.
And I mean, how many times have we heard that in movies now?
I know.
But I mean, come on, back then you're hearing that for the first time, and that is just...
Well, actually, Indiana Jones says it to Colonel Dietrich in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, okay. So,
Something similar to that.
It wasn't the exact quote, but it was something to the same effect.
Indiana Jones says it better.
Really? Indiana Jones, he
says it. He says, when I talk about the Ark, and Colonel Dietrich says, it's a mouthpiece for talking to God. And Indiana Jones holds up a rocket launcher and he goes, you want to talk to God? I've got nothing better to do. And it's going to blow everybody out.
So now the originality of Indiana Jones stays intact, and the originality of Riggs stays intact.
They're two different lines.
They're two different lines, so... Jerry, I kind of disagree with that, but I will have to say, even though I've just seen the Lethal Weapon franchise, I think I may prefer Martin Riggs over Indiana Jones.
What? Okay, this is a conversation for another day.
Yes, it is. All right, but getting back into the series, as I've just blew Jerry Reed's mind, there's so many great people in this series. He's already mentioned Gary Busey, but we have Joe Pesci, who's in 2, 3, and 4 as Leo Getz.
They kind of add somebody. Like every movie, they add somebody new. Like, you get Leo Getz added in 2, Rene Russo gets added in 3.
And then Chris Rock
gets added in 4.
And exactly. And it was just, it kept building on each other, and the series it created this kind of sitcom dynamic to me. I was so used to...
They do focus on the home life a lot, which is really interesting.
I mean, I almost wanted to, not to draw a parallel to another African-American cop, but I almost kind of thought of Family Matters as I'm watching.
Oh, Carl Winslow,
even though he's...
Who's in Die Hard?
Die Hard,
yeah, Reginald Del Johnson.
But I kind of had that same feeling kind of watching Murtaugh's Family, and then I'm thinking in my head that this came first. Who knows? Maybe this kind of laid the foundation for...
Did Riggs in some way lay the ground for Steve Urkel? I don't know.
No, maybe.
Probably not.
Probably not. Now, Indiana Jones laid the ground for Martin Riggs a little bit. I'll give you that, Jerry Reed, if that will make you feel better.
I'm sure that's what they were thinking.
I mean, overall, this series is definitely, confirmed epic. It's one of the best action series of all time. And I was looking into it. They actually wanted to do Lethal Weapon 5. But, Mel Gibson, we all know what he's been through.
Yeah.
And Danny Glover, he is literally getting too old for this shit. Okay, so... But, they both pretty much said they wouldn't do it if
Maybe they'll take Donald Glover and... somebody else and make like Lethal Weapon the early years. They can retcon everything.
Well, a friend of mine suggested Donald Glover from Community.
Yeah,
exactly. Maybe they will do. There was a rumor going around that he was Danny Glover's son, and he is not.
Yeah,
he is not. But I watched the first 2 episodes of Community, believing that Donald Glover is Danny Glover's son. So. Jerry and a few of my friends have suggested that idea, and they both said they wouldn't do it if Richard Donner, would not come back, and he said he's done with the series, and maybe that's good considering 5th movies aren't good in these franchises. If you look at Die Hard 5, which we will be reviewing later.
I mean, at this point, it just doesn't make realistic sense that they would still be running around doing, some of the stuff that they're doing now.
But here's what's interesting. So after they said they wouldn't do it in 2011, Warner Brothers looked into actually rebooting the Lethal Weapon franchise, and Shane Black had already written a script. Shane Black, who has I think he wrote all the Lethal Weapon movies. He's written Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and directed that, and he's directing Iron Man 3. So Shane Black is becoming a prominent writer and now director in his own right, but there were rumors that he would direct some kind of Lethal Weapon reboot or franchise, but that was 2011. Sadly, it's probably not going to happen now, Jerry. I'm just hoping that NECA will announce Riggs and Murtaugh action figures.
Oh, okay.
I hope they do. This is a fantasy of mine, or maybe Hot Toys. That will just have to do... if they're not going to make Lethal Weapon 5.
Imagine a variant of, Riggs with a gun in his mouth variant, every night he just sits there and holds the gun in his mouth. And
we could see, if they could do a series of figures, we could see Riggs' mullet get progressively smaller.
Yeah, I was going to mention that Mel Gibson's hair just gets smaller over the course of this movie series.
And by the 4th one, I think he finally abandons the flannel
short. Yeah,
his hair's short, and he finally abandons the flannel shirts. But I mean, I had 2 experiences watching this movie. One, I was like, "Where have you been all my life?" Yeah. But number 2, when I finally experienced epic movies like this for the first time, it's so awesome to have that feeling. I mean, it just takes you back, and we've talked about that as we reviewed a lot of the action stuff recently. So, Jerry Reed, as much as I love Lethal Weapon, let's move on. What else have you been checking out this week?
Not checking. I guess it's checking out as much, but the new series of Lego minifigures came out. They're little blind bag guys. You buy them in a bag. You can't see through them, but I sit there and fiddle with them in the store aisle till I know what's in there.
He does this for hours on end,
Yeah,
folks.
it took me about 25 minutes to find the 4 characters I wanted from the series. But like I said, they're little minifigures from Lego, but they're cool. They're about $2.99 a piece. Got a little fortune teller. She kind of looks like the little fortune teller statue from Big, but she's got little tarot cards that are made of Lego tiles. Got a little Cyclops guy here. He's got a little club. This guy's like a doctor. He's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He's kind of half green, half not. Got a bottle of potion or something. And I got this little one. It's like a little. She's a Celtic warrior. She looks like Merida from Brave, and I just thought it was really cool.
What series is this?
This is series
packaging.
This is series 9. This is series 9. They got some other characters. There's a waiter. He looks kind of like Alfred Pennyworth if you look at it. Yeah, he might be a good Alfred. There's one that's kind of a Marilyn Monroe, a movie star with an Academy Award or something, an Oscar.
That is really cool. I love that Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, well, I'll help you find her. There's a guy in a chicken suit. There's a roller derby girl. There's a police officer, a Roman, looks like Julius Caesar, a knight, like a British Parliament judge, an alien, a mermaid, a plumber with a plunger, and then like some kind of Japanese mech warrior. So they're really neat. They're really fun. And I mean, they're extremely popular. I know when they first came out, Toys R Us was having issues because people were just coming and buying the whole case of them.
There's something about having that mystery aspect to a toy or something. Now, there's most of the times you're going to pay money for something you want to know, but it kind of harkens me back to when I was a kid. I would have the thing that I want, like maybe a Sega Genesis or something, but then I would get a surprise, figure or something, or a He-Man sword, or one time I got this giant Venom thing, and I mean, I just always remember those surprises, and a mystery element is fun sometimes.
It's kind of fun. I actually have to admit, I've always known everyone that I've bought, because you just feel
it. You are a toy expert.
Well, I feel the pieces, but for Christmas, my mother was like, do you want something in your stocking? I'm like, yeah, give me one of the Lego mini guys. Let's just randomly see what it was. And one of them was like a bat, which was cool because I have like a horror theme, and one was a cheerleader, so I think she's just kind of standing around in my Lego town. But mystery, do you remember Trash Bag Warriors?
I have to say I have not seen it.
Trash Bag Warriors were in the early 90s, short story. They were very cool. I can't remember who put them out, but it may have been like Galoob Toys or something that did Micro Machines. I could be wrong on that. But these were sort of caught into that early 90s, like Captain Planet, Toxic Crusader, pro-environmental vibe of superheroes. And they were little plastic, unarticulated figures, kind of like a glorified plastic army man with a little bit of paint on them. But they came in what looked like a trash bag, like a plastic trash bag or something, and you opened it up, and they were in a package, and you threw it in your sink or your bathtub or your toilet, I guess.
They would grow.
And it dissolved. It dissolved the bag into like this green slime, and you pulled the figure out. And that's when you knew which figure you were getting. It was really cool.
That's really cool. I got a little confused because I thought you were going to talk about the type of little things you would put in a bathtub or a jar of water.
Not like the little pills that turn into sponges. This was like a plastic trash bag that was made of something that dissolved, and it had a plastic figure in it. But they were called Trash Bag Warriors, and they're really kind of expensive. I've tried to complete my set on eBay before, and they're sort of high.
Yeah.
When you go looking for them.
Well, maybe if you go down the Jim Wa's Collector's World, he has a lot of vintage toys. So
someday Jim might get a whole set of them in, and I'll buy them.
You never know. The Collector's World in Gastonia, North Carolina, may get some trash bag warriors every now and then.
He gets some weird random stuff.
All right. The other big thing I've been checking out this week is another new Marvel Now #1, Uncanny X-Men. #1, and this is written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Chris Bachalo. And this I was really eager to get into this book because it was our first look at Cyclops and the people who were impacted by the Phoenix Force, like Emma Frost and Magic, post AVX. And I was really eager. I'll just go ahead and warn, the next section of this podcast may contain spoilers for not only Uncanny #1, but AVX and Messiah Complex and House of M, all the X-Men stuff. So don't want to spoil that for anyone. But want to go ahead and get into #1. I think the most grand accomplishment of this book is, and there's two reasons. Yes, Brian Michael Bendis is writing, and the absolute amazing costume redesign that Joe Quesada did for Cyclops. They have finally managed to make Cyclops badass. Yeah, he kind of has the X as his visor, and it's a really cool looking black and red suit. It's different than the one he had in AVX, but what's interesting is, like, all these mutants have been popping up all over the globe post AVX, because when Hope Summers extinguished the Phoenix Force, it had the opposite effect of House of M, and House of M, Wanda Maximoff, created an event that kind of decimated the mutant population. So now these mutants are finally starting to pop back up, and it's a very interesting look at that, because the mutants who are popping back up are not just your basic mutants. They're close to Omega level mutants. For those of you who don't read the X books, that is very, very powerful mutants. And it's just really...
Who is an Omega level mutant that I would know? Professor X?
There's only one.
Who?
See if you can guess who it is. Who do you think it is?
Wolverine, because he's everything, usually.
No, there's only one Omega level mutant. Jean Grey.
Jean Grey. Okay.
Okay. Now, I'm like 90% sure she's the only Omega level mutant. If anybody wants to comment, Jerry will check me on that as I continue looking into X-Men #1. But the team consists of Emma Frost, Magneto. It consists of, obviously, Scott Summers, Magic, and two new mutants that are there. One named Tempest, who, despite only being a mutant for 4 days, can control space and time. And another mutant who is a unknown healer. Okay, now, one thing to point out, Scott has lost control of his powers, whereas Magneto and Emma Frost have been weakened post-AVX. So in this book, you really get to see Magneto do some cool things, kind of improvising, because his magnetism power is not as strong. Jerry, there were more Omega level.
Apparently, other confirmed Omega level mutants include Jean Grey, Vulcan, Rachel Summers, Iceman, Legion, Elixir, Franklin Richards, and Jubilee.
So I stand
I'm just
corrected.
kidding. Jubilee is not Omega level mutant.
I didn't think.
But all the rest
Jubilee
of them are confirmed Omega level mutants.
Iceman kind of catches me off
Jubilee
guard
makes
there.
fireworks with her hands.
Yeah. If she was an Omega level, I may drop all X titles immediately.
Yeah.
But it's just it's cool to see, because here we kind of have the outlaw team. These are people who have now become an inspiration for a new mutant rebellion, but Cyclops has just killed Charles Xavier at the end of AVX. Jerry, did that just surprise you?
That did surprise me. I always thought Cyclops was like the he played by the rules.
This is the new Cyclops.
He's the new Cyclops.
Well, he was consumed by the Dark Phoenix.
Oh, I thought he watched Lethal Weapon and decided he'd go after the Riggs model of playing by the rules.
Yeah, he doesn't play by the rules.
He doesn't play by the rules anymore.
But to see
Professor X was 2 days from retirement too.
Yeah, he didn't quite make it. He did not. Nice Lethal Weapon X-Men mashup, Jerry Reed. But so yeah, Professor X is dead, and that plays into this story that they set up in #1, cause you have a today and yesterday scenario. In the yesterday part of the book, the new Uncanny X team go to rescue a new mutant who has popped up, who can shoot uncontrollable balls out of his body. So I don't believe he's going to be a fan favorite, but it works for the sake of the story because he's not the focus. But as they go for this rescue mission to rescue what we'll just call now Ball Boy, as they rescue Ball Boy.
Does he have a name?
No, he doesn't have a name. He just became a mutant post AVX when the Phoenix Force was extinguished.
And just turn people into mutants? Okay.
We don't know if it turned people into mutants
or awakened their powers.
Awakened the powers to the opposite effect of what Wanda Maximoff did at House of M.
Him having to explain that to people, like, what's your mutant power? He's like, I shoot uncontrollable balls from my body.
Well, he just got the power, so maybe in issue 2 of Uncanny X-Men, he'll explain that awkwardly to Emma Frost or something. So that
could be awkward.
That will be worth the $4 the book will cost. So
why is it $4? Is it longer than a lot of other books? Or?
No, that's the standard price for all comics, pretty much. Even Batman is $4.
Well, Batman's $4, but it's a longer book. It has the alternate story, like Batman, Detective Comics, and Justice League are longer books.
Well, this is Marvel now, Jerry. Where now everything is $4.
DC drew the line at $2.99.
They've ended that. They have a lot of $4 books.
Yeah, but they usually are longer than the other ones. I don't know.
I will say Jerry's DC love is coming out.
But most of most of the books I read from IDW and stuff like that are $3.99, so it's not a huge deal.
$3.99 is becoming the common price point, which is kind of, it kills you too, because a lot of the books are twice a month. Uncanny X-Men, Superior Spider-Man, a lot of these Marvel Now titles are twice a month. That's $8.
I have to say, it's been a big reason why I've sort of scaled back my monthly reading and went to trades. I hate to do that, but the price of trades has kind of gone down. I mean, you can usually get them for relatively low prices.
Especially if you pre-order Amazon.
Or something like that, whereas, the books are, you get discounts and stuff, like if you have an account at a comic store, so that helps.
Yeah, at Jim Wa's Collector's World, we get a discount because we're monthly reservists there.
Yeah,
so.
But I've cut down the number of books that I read, just out of necessity.
Well, good for you. As a result of Marvel Now, I've picked up Jerry's slack, so Collector's World is happy to know that. So we have the yesterday scenario where they are mounting a rescue mission for Ball Boy to get back to Uncanny X-Men. But as hilarious as this sounds to Jerry Reed, in this scene we have an epic showdown between the X-Men and the Sentinels, which Chris Bachalo absolutely nails, hits the art out of the park. Alright, and we have the Today storyline where Maria Hill is interrogating, or more or less having a not brutal but kind of passionate discussion with, an unknown mutant who is looking like a double dealer, somebody who's going to betray Cyclops. And, we don't know who it is. And then on the last panel, big spoiler here in the next 10 seconds for number 1 of Uncanny X-Men, it is revealed to be Magneto, who says he is vowing revenge for the death of Charles Xavier, and he's working as a double agent with S.H.I.E.L.D. to kind of bring Cyclops down from within. And I just think that is a hell of a reveal for a number 1 and sets up some very interesting stories down the pipeline for Uncanny X-Men. So, I'm a big Bendis fan. He's writing to this. He's setting up a pretty epic storyline here. If you're in the area, go down to Collector's World and reserve your copy of Uncanny. If not, MidtownComics.com has some really good online subscription service. Jerry Reed, anything else you've been checking out?
Yeah, my wife and I just finished the first season of a TV show, cartoon that I love. It's really great. It's kind of one of those that
just spit it out.
You tell somebody that you like it, and they're sort of like, really? But then it's kind of like the stages. They go through it, and they're like, oh, I don't know. My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic.
And he laughed at me for reading Uncanny X-Men featuring Ball Boy.
Well, My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic is probably one of the best cartoons that I have watched in years. I mean, it's really fun. It's really colorful. It's, the writing is clever. It's a nice mix of being, just fun and silly while also being really clever. There's all kinds of references to movies and TV shows. and pop culture, and it's just a delightful show. I absolutely love it.
And for everybody who doesn't know, what channel does this show come on?
It comes on the Hub. We're actually watching it through Netflix, which is why we're just on the first season. But it looks like Netflix has the first 2 seasons. But I have to say, I've kind of delayed in putting the label on myself. But I think I'm going to consider myself a brony, because I love this show, man. It's awesome.
I'll say one thing about it. The animation was nice, and I'll just leave it at that.
All right.
I have one other thing that I've been checking out that I wanted to talk about. And I checked out the premiere this past Wednesday of AMC's Comic Book Man. It was Season 2, Part 2. They split the season up into 2 nights. And Comic Book Man has got a pretty good following now. It has become the geek Pawn Stars. At first, Comic Book Man followed Walking Dead, and that helped them lay a foundation for a fan base. But now Comic Book Man it headlines a night of reality shows for AMC on Thursdays. So,
what is the show?
The show is AMC's Comic Book Man.
Men,
yes.
In multiples.
Man is in multiple. I apologize if I said man, although my favorite man on that show is Ming Chen. We have on the show features Ming Chen, Mike Zapsik. Let's see. It also Kevin Smith's on there from time to time, and we have Walt Flanagan and Brian Johnson, and it kind of goes through the day-to-day life of running a comic book shop by, kind of looking at the secret stash in Red Bank, New Jersey. Now, before I get in this epic episode they had, Jerry, we were talking about this maybe when Comic Book Man Season 1 started. I don't believe you checked it out, right?
No.
But you were saying you're not a big fan of shows like these. You were saying a lot of the stuff is kind of staged and stuff like that. Do you want to maybe elaborate on that point?
And I can't speak specifically to Comic Book Man. I don't know exactly what Comic Book Man is doing. I do know that...
Some epic stuff.
It was a couple of the toy-based shows, like, what is it, Toy Hunter or something, and Collector Intervention. A lot of those shows...
I watched both of those. They were entertaining. They are no Comic Book Man, though.
Okay. And I mean, like I said, if you're really just detailing what happens in, the life of, like, a comic book shop or something, that's pretty interesting. I mean, it's interesting to see, like, a slice of life type of thing every now and then. But some of the shows, especially the ones that deal with when it starts being something collectible, people, your average person watches that show and they'll watch, somebody sell a really rare comic book, or, watch Toy Hunter and somebody will mysteriously find a original Boba Fett prototype,
which was featured on the episode of Toy Hunter.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a whole. You can read other places where people talk about how staged some of that stuff is, because let's be honest, I mean, a lot of that stuff.
You're not gonna walk in. That has to be staged a lot of times, and we're not trying to bash Toy Hunter, but. It does happen, a lot of staging and
stuff.
But
I think one of the things is that people watch that, and then they say, oh, well, that Boba Fett prototype just sold for,
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, tens of thousands of dollars. My son has some old broken Star Wars figures upstairs. I'm going to put them on eBay at a ridiculous price or something like that.
It kind of drives up the market for stuff that shouldn't be, like the Power of the Force.
I mean,
Star Wars
people
figures.
get unrealistic expectations, and it just kind of has a weird effect on the market. I mean, I think the comic book market is, in a lot of ways, still recovering.
Actually, 2012 was one of the biggest sales years since the early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, we're just getting the point where it's probably recovering from the whole early 90s,
foil cover.
Oh, foil covers, hologram covers, and, every issue was like a #1 issue.
Unfortunately, Marvel is doing a foil cover for Age of Ultron #1.
Oh gosh, look out.
So I will be picking that up at Collector's World, but I have to question, Marvel, what the hell are you doing?
So,
alright, Jerry Reed.
I'm just saying, sometimes shows like that get to be sensationalist, and they drive up market prices. They have people just look at it as this whole thing is about money. That's always just about money. That's what collecting is about. And, I mean, I think it gives people an unrealistic idea of what collecting or comic book reading is. I can't judge any of these shows because I'll be honest, I've seen bits and pieces of Toy Hunter and Collector Intervention. I haven't seen Comic Book Men. I don't watch a lot of TV, but just from what I hear people discussing, it seems to take these shows seem to take collecting and comic book and just reduce it down to
price value.
Antique Roadshow for geekdom.
I'll tell you what, I will say as somebody who watched Comic Book Man, Toy Hunter, and Collection Intervention, seen every episode of every one of those shows.
Oh my gosh.
I've seen every episode of all those shows, and I will say that Comic Book Man is the mecca of geek reality shows, because throughout the cast we have different representations of the collecting world. We have Walt, who is more on the business side of things, but as far as Mike Zapsik and Ming Chen, we get to see, and even Walt to an extent, their love for the properties and the heroes shine through on a episode by episode basis. So that they are legit and they are the king of geek reality. But a great episode to bring back season 2 this past week. They actually had Nate Quarry on, a former UFC fighter, who actually just has an unbelievable life story. He had faced adversity his whole life. He grew up a Jehovah's Witness, and as a kid, he was this scrawny little geeky, like Peter Parker type, and he was never allowed to see movies or anything like that, so he wasn't familiar with your John McClanes and your people like that, or your Rambos, but he could he was allowed to read comics, and it's something he kind of always took with him to his heart. And Nate, just like a lot of people, was working a crappy job. He was trying to feed his newborn daughter and just not making good money. And one day the boss is just berating him, just talking to him in a terrible tone, using foul language with him. He says, you shouldn't treat your employees like that. That makes me not want to work hard. He said, maybe you should just get out. And after 10 years of working at this construction company, he walks out, goes to a UFC gym, begins training, and he goes from Peter Parker to winner of the Ultimate Fighter, and then eventually fighting for the UFC title. And his days in the octagon are finished, but now his passion is become comic books. He is trying to launch a comic known as Zombie Cage Fighter.
Zombie Cage Fighter.
And Zombie Cage Fighter is a cool looking book. I hadn't seen it. It's only in a certain few shops because he hasn't been able to get a publisher for the book. He actually worked on it with comedian and former G4 personality Blair Butler, who is a prominent comic book reviewer. They worked on this book together. And Zombie Cage Fighter, if you want to check it out, go to zombiecagefighter.com. Or you can Google and go to, I believe it's thesecretstash.com, and order a copy from Red Bank up there. But it was just this cool inspirational story. So it got into this kind of, Walt being the business guy, he was like, Nate wanted his Zombie Cage Fighter on the shelf of the Secret Stash. And Walt's like, all right, give me some. So he's like, they're always talking about epic superhero battles, Hulk versus Superman, Batman versus Superman. We could do a whole show on those scenarios. But he's like, how about if we set one of those up in UFC form? So the fight they set up, and, Kevin Smith, everybody's there. They have no idea what they're setting up. It's Jay versus Silent Bob.
Oh, my gosh. That's
ultimate
funny.
Fighting match, and there's blood and sweat, and these guys are watching at ringside, and it is just a really...
So they had people dress up like Jay and Silent Bob and fight?
Actual UFC fighters dressed up as Jay and Silent Bob and got into a full-scale fight in the octagon.
Wow.
So it was a really cool episode. And Jerry, so if you could see one superhero battle, what would it be? They chose Jay and Silent Bob. It doesn't have to be in a UFC ring. Just any two battle it out.
Any two battle it out.
Marvel, DC, anything.
Gosh.
I'll give you mine while you're thinking.
Okay.
All right, mine have always got into this with my friends would be Batman versus Iron Man. Because we have two similar
yeah.
rich billionaires. who don't have any superpowers per se, and they're so different. You know, Tony Stark is so flashy, and Bruce is kind of fake flashy.
Yeah, he plays flashy.
He plays flashy, but Tony Stark is that. Not that Tony Stark doesn't have the heart of a hero, because he does. But it would just be cool to see that. I obviously think Batman would win, even though I am a huge Marvel fanboy. But, Jerry, what would be yours?
Well, I'm not going to pick Batman because it just wouldn't be fair to any of the other people that I picked. I think a great fight would be Hellboy versus Etrigan.
That would be
Hellboy versus cool Etrigan, the rhyming demon from the DC universe, the Jack Kirby Hellboy, or Jack Kirby Etrigan. Great.
You would have that whole paranormal.
Yeah. I mean,
going.
they're both immune to fire. It'd be a really fun fight. I think they'd have some good dialogue. It'd be really cool to actually even see Mike Mignola draw that.
Number 2 for me, just real quick, because I couldn't resist spitting it out there, would be Hulk versus Superman. And there was a guy who did a Hulk versus Superman CGI rendering.
Yeah.
Did you happen to see that, Jerry?
No.
It is, for a CGI rendering, it is pretty
Hulk
epic.
Fight the Superman in like a Marvel DC crossover or something? I'm pretty sure that actually happened.
That may have happened. I'm not actually sure. But if it did, it was sometime in the 90s or very early 2000s, because Marvel and DC, they don't do crossovers anymore like they used to.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, check out AMC's Comic Book Man. That's going to be 9 o'clock on Thursdays, and they replay the show at 10:30, midnight, and 4 a.m. So, Jerry will check the Hulk versus Superman backdrop, and he'll update us as we go throughout the show. But let's go ahead and get into some of the epic news items of the week. So, the big news is PlayStation 4. We're going to save that for the end of epic news, so go ahead and tease that a little bit. So, let's talk about the big epic news of the week, Jerry.
Big epic news of the week.
And that is, besides PlayStation 4, is Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and most importantly, Harrison Ford have said they all have interest and will probably be returning for Episode 7, and we're just waiting for a confirmation from Disney. Jerry, what do you think? A couple weeks on this podcast, we really doubted Harrison Ford coming back. I
really doubt. Yeah, I doubted it. I mean, he'd said it a number of times. I mean, it's been years ago, but part of me is really excited. I mean, part of me is like, well, it's going to be great to have these characters back and to do something that we truly never... I mean, think about it. With the original... When there was talk of the original prequels, I mean, everybody was like, well, yeah, they got to do prequels because how would they do newer movies? I don't know. It's exciting to see these characters if they come back. I'm excited to hear about that. They don't look the same, but it'll be...
Harrison Ford looks the closest to his original character.
Looks the closest. I mean, Mark Hamill, still, Carrie Fisher looks different, but...
It's just age. Mark Hamill has a little bit of weight on him, but, he looks like what you would expect him to look with his age.
I'm interested to see them get back into the characters and just see a natural progression. I think that's the biggest thing is, if they're still doing crazy, of course, they didn't do, much crazy stunts or anything in the original Star Wars movies. I mean, they weren't about, crazy stunts and stuff. So,
I picture them, with them coming back, it'll be as in a mentoring capacity, or maybe just we set the stage. Maybe we see a young family of Solos.
We could.
Kind of in the home at the beginning, and like in A New Hope with Luke and his aunt and uncle.
I think they should pair Han Solo with a young scoundrel, and Han Solo's 2 days from retirement, and the young scoundrel, is kind of like doesn't play by the rules,
If something happens where Harrison Ford backs out, I think they should get Danny Glover to be Han Solo.
Danny Glover.
I mean, just joking, completely joking, but I don't know. It surprises me that they are all going to come back. They're very willing, and, money's not an issue with these people.
No.
They could go to a convention and make more than we can in 3 or 4 years just by signing
Here's
autographs.
the real question. Is Billy D. Williams coming back?
He has stated on numerous occasions that he wants to come back.
I hope so.
It hasn't been, hinted at if Lando Calrissian will play any part in this new trilogy.
I would love to see that Lando's still playing a part. I mean, he had a pretty big character arc in the original movie.
I mean, it's like, how can Han Solo, he betrays him in Cloud City and Empire, and then, they are seen a little chummy in Jedi.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know.
I think one, it's been years, but two, I think he'd understand, like, what happened during those dark times and how the Empire, played friends and family against each other. I mean, I think a big part of the original trilogy is about forgiveness. That's a huge element. Luke forgives Vader for stuff that happens. Han comes to forgive Lando for what happened. I mean, I would love to see that.
If nothing else, we'd love to at least see a cameo from Billy D. Williams.
Absolutely.
I mean, why not? He would be up for it in a heartbeat.
Sure.
The fans would absolutely love it. But, this is going to end everything that we know, and a lot of other rumors, but still no confirmation from Disney, has said that this plot will completely focus on the children of the Skywalker family, whether that's just Han and Leia's kids and it's a solo Skywalker, or whether Luke has a new love interest and he has had kids. So I mean, it's just something to be really excited about. I mean, just the fact to see those three together on the big screen again has to make every fanboy's heart drop just a little bit.
Well, and it's really cool to see an older Chewbacca. I'm excited to see an older Chewbacca.
Maybe he'll just be really great. Can I make one request, though?
Yeah.
I don't want to see Leia in the slave girl outfit. I don't want to see Carrie Fisher as the slave girl Leia in this new trilogy. So J.J. Abrams...
She's still a pretty lady.
Well, I don't know. There's Sandra Bullock has a new movie coming out where she talks about having to have certain things taped up where they don't fall out.
Yeah.
I think they may have to add that to the Leia costume. Just joking.
They just need to make sure they do the hair buns at some point. Point.
Oh yes, definitely. I think they'll be there. All right. Another news item is Jason Momoa, who we have recently talked about as being the villain in Bullet to the Head on our very first podcast, and who plays Drago on Game of Thrones, has been offered the role of Drax the Destroyer in Marvel's Guardian of the Galaxy movie slated for August 2014. Now, just to set the backdrop, Drax the Destroyer, he is a person whose sole purpose in life is to kill Thanos. And Jerry, this seems like the perfect role for Momoa.
Oh man, I mean, he really, like I said, I sat there the whole movie trying to figure out who he was and recognize him from Conan the Barbarian. I mean, he definitely does the angsty, vengeful, just kind of loving what he does part well. And yeah, I mean, I think he'd be a good Drax the Destroyer. And basically Jason Momoa with a shaved head and green.
Yeah, I mean, you can totally see that. And just for those of you who don't, besides his sole purpose being to kill Thanos, he has a reason for wanting to do that. Drax was originally a human whose family that Thanos murdered, and then Kronos offered to put Drax's spirit into a new, more powerful body. So maybe we will have a weaker person playing the human form of Drax, and then Momoa is simply, Drax the Destroyer, when he is born. So I'm really looking forward. I mean, Thanos is probably the most ruthless villain in Marvel. Death is nothing to him, and we're going to talk a lot more about Thanos between now and Avengers 2, I'm sure, but it's just, I think Momoa fits that role well.
It's good. Sounds like good casting.
And let's hope he takes it. It's just been offered. It hasn't been confirmed yet. So, let's get into the most epic news of the week. We don't do a lot of video game talking on the Epic Review. We have a video game consultant, Andrew Stokes, who covers that kind of thing for our Facebook page and is going to have some good articles down the pipeline. But
right, Andrew?
Yeah.
Right, Andrew?
Okay. He is. That's just a shout out to our boy. All right. PlayStation 4, though. Okay. Jerry,
just announced today.
initial reactions to PlayStation 4.
I mean, I'm not
the
overly
idea of the console.
Yeah, I mean it. I don't know. I don't have a PlayStation 3.
But you had a 1 and a 2.
I had a 1 and a 2, and I thought they were really good. I mean, 2 was, at the time, I think 2 was the best console for that. Since then, I've sort of leaned more towards, the Xbox 360 is my console of choice. So I'm more excited waiting for what Microsoft has to announce. But the biggest thing I see it is I hear less and less about games with newer consoles and the focus being on games, and more about the focus being on, being able to share with people. I mean, turning it more into an extension of...
We're looking at a social video gaming network.
Yeah, a social video gaming network. And, I mean, personally to me, that's not anything I care about,
You do care about online gaming, but you don't care about interacting with people
you know what? I mean, I'll play
on a console.
I'll play Halo online, and I've been playing some Halo 4. I'll play with a friend every now and then, but I play video games like I watch a movie or read a book. Like, I want to be engaged. I want to be engrossed in a world. I want a good story.
I'm the same here.
And the social aspects of video gaming doesn't really appeal to me that much. I mean, like, Xbox has got all these social features, and, I use them so sparingly they might as well not even exist. So, as I'm looking at it, the controller looks kind of cool. I mean, there's some neat features on there, but supposedly PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 games will be playable in some way on it.
Yeah, and let's just go over the rundown of some of the stats. Now, the price point is rumored, as we put on our Facebook page this week. It looks like we're going to have a $429 and a $529 console, which are both cheaper than the $506 for initial versions of the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, that was an expensive console.
I bought the PlayStation 3 at midnight on launch. It was $600.
Wow.
Yes, it was, and it was a lot. It was a lot of money. And then the controller that we gave a sneak peek of is not the actual controller, but is very similar. The one we had up on the Facebook page and teased this week. It will have a touchscreen aspect. And it's being called the DualShock 4 in perfect Sony tradition, sticking with the DualShock. A lot of people got annoyed when they ditched the DualShock at the start of the PS3, which they later, reintroduced that. But in this DualShock 4 with the PlayStation 4, it will have a touchscreen, and you mentioned the social network aspect of gaming. This Sony is trying to push. It will have a share button, where you can immediately share maybe an epic boss battle that you just fought, or an epic kill on Call of Duty.
I imagine it'd be good, for people trying to do online walkthroughs and stuff. It'd be a lot easier to, if you're trying to show somebody where something is, take a quick video of it, or share it. And if you just found some little key or something, or...
My reaction when I heard this, I kind of figured the consoles were coming this year, PlayStation 4 and 720, and they're probably both going to be out in November. That nothing confirmed, but that's what we all suspect in time for the holiday shopping season. I've got almost every console right around launch. As I said, PlayStation 3 midnight in 2006, 360 midnight in 05. And I'm out of the video game kind of world. I'm out of the loop. If it's a certain franchise, for example, Gears of War, Arkham City, I will get into it. But online gaming, I don't really have the time for, and I have other stuff in my free time that takes precedent over that. But I do have a Wii U 360.
You have a Wii U?
Yes, I have a Wii U. It's actually my brother's.
I didn't know you had one.
But there's one in my household, and a PlayStation 3. But it got to the point, Jerry, where I was just using my PlayStation 3 to play Blu-rays pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when it first came out, it was the cheapest Blu-ray player at $500-$600.
That's true. That's true. My dad had considered getting one. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, it's the cheapest Blu-ray player. It's like, oh, makes
But
sense.
I will say it was not a bad investment, even though you can get Blu-ray players dirt cheap now for about $50 to $100.
Yeah.
But it is an ever-evolving Blu-ray player because with the online updates, it can now do all the lossless audio, and it can do 3D too, playback 3D, which you have to have a certain Blu-ray player just to do 3D. And we all know Jerry's not the biggest fan of 3D, but it's cool to have. I do have a 3D TV. So, I don't know if I'll get either one of these consoles, Jerry. Will you be getting at least the new Xbox, rumored to be called the Xbox 720?
Yeah, I mean, I'll I would like to say I'll plan on it, but, I'm kind of like you. I mean, I still play video games. I play video games a lot.
Way more than I do.
Yeah, way more than Brad does. I mean, I'm definitely an achievement hunter, on 360. And
I'm somebody who beats the story and just wants to get it through.
But, I mean, like I said, I'll play games that the story interests me, that I think the world, of the game is interesting, but I don't know. I mean, I can't say that I'm going to be out there on launch day to get my Xbox 720, which I got my 360 on launch day when it came out.
Oh, you did? That's cool. Okay.
I got it at Sam's Club. Picked it up.
How long did you wait in line for the 360?
Oh, about 3 minutes. I went to a Sam's Club and nobody else seemed to go there, and I had it on pre-order at GameStop, and I pre-ordered mine probably in July of 2005. August of 2005, and they said they're only getting 4 units in, and mine wasn't one of them. So I just took my money and decided I didn't think anybody else would go to Sam's Club, and I mean there were about 15 people there, but I walked out with the big deluxe bundles, 2 controllers, wireless,
which was going on eBay at the time for close to $1,000.
Yeah, I didn't pay nearly that much.
I think it was around $400. Quick story. When 360 first launched, waited in line 13 hours at Walmart.
Oh my gosh.
For PlayStation 3, waited in line 40 hours.
You waited in line 40 hours for PlayStation 3?
40 hours at my local Walmart for PlayStation 3. I got to know the staff very well. We camped in the home and garden section.
Oh my gosh.
And they had heaters, thank God. It was cold. It was November. So, you get to know the people pretty well when you're hanging out with gamers for 40 hours. You're too tired to play the console when you get home. But I will definitely
Did you sleep?
I caught an hour or 2 nap every now and again, but I was so stoked for those consoles. And now, I tell you what, I will probably end up getting the new Xbox, but not at launch. When a game comes out, if Gears of War 4 or a new Arkham game comes out, I will break down and go buy one. But for the holiday rush, I don't think I'll be in line 13 to 40 hours this go around.
I can't do that anymore.
All right, I think that's just about going to wrap us up for Epic News this week. So let's just go ahead and get into our featured review, which was the return of John McClane, Bruce Willis, in Die Hard 5, A Good Day to Die Hard.
Dad, just try not to make an even bigger mess of things.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Да.
First time in Moscow?
Yeah. First time.
You American?
Yeah. New York.
I hook up?
Yeah.
Welcome to Moscow.
Jack! Dad?
Alright, that was from the trailer of A Good Day to Die Hard. And Jerry, won't you just go ahead and run through the not so set up so well, but actually simplistic plot of Die Hard 5, or A Good Day to Die Hard.
Okay. I mean, basic premise isn't bad. John McClane is, really wanting to track down his son. He's estranged from Jack McClane and uses his contacts as a detective to find out that Jack has recently assassinated somebody over in Moscow, Russia. So, trying to be the good father, John heads over there and gets caught up in a international situation and finds out that his son is not a criminal or involved with drugs like he thought, but his son is actually a CIA agent and is trying to get a political prisoner named Komarov out of the country. Komarov apparently has some evidence against a man named Shigarin, who's high up in the Russian government and appears to
be a rising political star.
Yeah, rising political star. The CIA is afraid of what will happen if Shigarin gets into power. So McClane gets involved and decides that he's going to help his son to get Komarov out of the country, and hijinks ensue.
And there's a lot of decent, okay twists that we'll get into later, and spoilers. But I just want to give my initial reaction to this
Give me your
film.
initial reaction, Brad Bell.
I'll say I'm honestly very disappointed. A Good Day to Die Hard was probably my 4th or 5th most anticipated movie of 2013. And when I went into the movie, you know, I was so pumped. And when I walked out, I was like, all right, I just saw another February, you know, generic action release. You know, Jerry and I both agree when talking about this movie, when you put the Die Hard name in the title, you don't expect a good action movie, a generic action movie. You expect a great or epic, hopefully epic action film. And I think it's safe to say A Good Day to Die Hard wasn't that, Jerry.
You know what's really funny is if you look, most of the Die Hard movies, I think the first 4 were not intended to be Die Hard movies. Die Hard 3 was originally a movie called Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Die Hard with a Vengeance
was originally Lethal Weapon 4. If I'm right, it was either Lethal Weapon 3 or Lethal Weapon 4. That was the original thing. It was originally a movie called Simon Says, and then they decided that it was going to be a movie called. It was going to be the sequel to Lethal Weapon, and
with Bruce Willis in it.
No, it was going to be. They were going to use that script.
Oh, that story.
Yeah, that story.
Okay,
that story. That script was going to be the new.
Sorry about
the new
that.
Lethal Weapon movie. But then they decided, no, let's turn it into the new Die Hard movie instead.
And it worked really well. Yeah. I don't just, you know, a few of the problems I had with this movie. I don't know. It was everything seemed very generic, from the action all the way to the script. You know, there was really never that. There were times where it got close and scratched the surface, but at least it felt like, to me, there was never that classic Die Hard moment or that, you know, quintessential Die Hard line. I kept waiting for that, Jerry, and it just wasn't there.
You know, well, this was Valentine's Day for my wife and I. We decided to go see Die Hard, Good Day to Die Hard on Valentine's Day. And so we went out, and I mean, we enjoyed it. We had a nice time. It was, you know, the movie wasn't awful. I mean, it's not the kind of movie you're going to sit there and just say, oh, I can't wait till it's over. Unless you really don't like action movies, then you might. But it never got to the height that we expected it to get to. You just kept waiting. I'm like, okay, something's gonna happen. Something's gonna break loose. Somebody's gonna show up, and this is eventually gonna go over the top and, you know, be fantastic.
It attempted to go over the top, but didn't hit the mark.
No, it just never felt like it happened. It just felt like,
all right, I'm here.
It's
an action movie. It's over. Let's go home. I mean, that's kind of the feeling I had with it. And one of the best thing about the Die Hard series are the memorable villains, whether it's Hans or Simon Gruber, the Gruber brothers, you know, in 1 and 3, or the general, whose name I cannot recall off the top of my head from Die Hard 2. Jerry will look that up for us. Or Timothy Elephant as Thomas Gabriel in Die Hard 4. They were all very great villains who had a lot of depth to them, and when they interacted with John McClane, you could see a bit of a dynamic.
I think that's the important part, is the villain has to be able to interact with John McClane. I mean, John McClane's an interesting character. You know, he's really intelligent, but he tries ridiculously crazy things as well. I mean, he interacts with them, and he eggs people on, and he uses his, kind of his feisty wit to really get, kind of throw the villains off balance.
And kind of create some comedic moments within very tension-filled, dangerous, death-threatening situations. And, the primary villains, which is Shigerin and Komarov, Shigerin never interacted with
Shigerin never interacts with John
McClane.
McClane, and I mean his part's really small. He's a guy that seems like he could be interesting, and so yeah, I'm kind of waiting for when's Shigerin going to get involved in this? Because we're only ever seeing him through like scenes where he's talking on a phone with somebody, or like a newsreel type thing at the beginning that sort of sets the movie up, and you're just wondering, when's he going to show up? And him and John McClane are gonna go back and forth a bit. Never happens.
Yeah, it never happens, and Komarov was not all that interesting of a primary villain as well. I mean, there wasn't much there to him, and we'll get into some more about him in spoilers, but the best villain in this movie, both you and I agreed about this, was Alec, who was kind of became known throughout this film as the dancer. And set that up.
Yeah,
for us,
I mean,
Jerry.
there's a scene where there's one scene in the movie that feels very, very, very Die Hard-ish. And, Alec, he's this mercenary that works for Shigerin. He's got a group of guys. They wear these kind of classy suits. Alec's sitting there and he's dancing.
He's dancing.
And he's eating a carrot, like a raw carrot.
And it sounds kind of like it would be goofy, but it was kind of like, well, hey, he kind of has a little depth and
got some flair to it.
He's got some flavor and kind of signature to him as a villain. He's the dancing, carrot eating, which saying that now sounds like the lamest villain ever, but he was a good villain. And, he's sitting here interacting with them, and, John McClane and his son Jack, they're being held captive at this point in the film. And, what is it that John kind of interacts with him with? He kind of jokes around, pokes fun at him. And
he kind of, he gives him the name Dancer, which I'm not sure because he danced or because he eats carrots like a reindeer. I don't know, maybe so.
Not that there's anything wrong with this, but kind of implying that he may be a little fruity.
Sure, he mentions that, the guys, their suits are kind of, he's like, nice suit, and, sort of in a facetious way.
I think he made a claim like they were kind of a generic kind of bad guy suit that they were wearing.
Yeah, I think I remember something about that.
So he's agging Alec on as a distraction, so while he and Jack, get out of their ties.
They're in like those plastic ties that you see like riot cops use.
Yeah.
And to distract him, Bruce Willis just starts the crazy, laughing, kind of like in the end of the original Die Hard or The Last Boy Scout. Just kind of that crazy, or his laughing at Kevin Smith in Live Free or Die Hard when he's talking about the command center and the Wizard or the Warlock?
The Warlock.
Warlock, yeah.
Freddy the Warlock.
He just starts that crazy laughing that Bruce Willis does so well. And the villains are kind of laughing too, and it kind of reminded me of the scene in Austin Powers when Dr. Evil gets all the villains together, and they start that, ha 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 ha, ha ha ha, and the laughing dies down a little bit, little by little until it's awkward. It's kind of one of those scenes. It was funny. It felt like a Die Hard moment.
And yeah, it felt like a Die Hard moment. It felt like we about had another great Die Hard villain to add to this great list of villains. But, we'll get into in spoilers. Alec's character was a bit short-lived. Another thing is the action scenes. To me, Die Hard movies, the action scenes kind of top each other as the series goes on. So, you have all the stuff in Nakatomi Plaza in the first one. It's very enclosed, and there's a lot of epic moments in that film. But as we go throughout the franchise, we kind of see, more upscale kind of epic jaw-dropping scenes.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in the second one we had the where he ejects that from the airplane, and we also had that final fight between he and the general on the airplane, and you know,
General Stewart.
I believe it's General Stewart.
And I think my favorite part of maybe my favorite part of the Die Hard series, is when he lights the fuel trail from the plane on fire and blows it up midair.
Now, did Die Hard 2 top the first one? No, but that scene was kind of, you know...
Yeah, I mean, the action scenes were, you know, more intense.
More elaborate.
Die Harder is, like, my favorite.
Yeah.
I know it's most people's not
It was favorite. Most people's least favorite until Die Hard 5, so...
Yeah.
And like, so, you know, we have that. And then in the third one, we have that subway scene, you know, that is pretty epic. And then in the fourth one, it's like, all right, they were saying, how can we top everything in every single one of the previous Die Hard films? And we have the cop car crashing into the helicopter. We have the SUV scene in the elevator. At the very end, we have a semi-truck versus a jet fighter. And it's like, wow. I mean, I remember walking out of that movie, and it was just like euphoria as an action fan. I mean, felt spent.
There's good massive scenes. There's good close-up fight scenes. There's good gunfights and
great interactions with all the characters.
Live Free or Die Hard is a much, much, much better movie than some people give it credit for.
Yeah, a lot of Die Hard fans seem to kind of chastise it, but
I know that there's a, you know, there's kind of the Die Hard feel. There's always sort of that idea of, you know, the first one, second one, John McClane's stuck in one place. The third one, people say, well, you know, he's stuck in the city. He's stuck at doing what Simon Gruber wants him to do. But I mean, 4, you know, in a way, he's kind of stuck. There's no technology. You know, everything's shut down, so he's sort of
he's all over the East Coast.
Yeah,
but you know, I mean. It was so disappointing coming from Live Free to Die Hard into, you know, A Good Day to Die Hard. Yeah. So I think we got a lot more to talk about The Good Day to Die Hard 5.
But we got to bring up some spoilers.
Yeah. But before let's just, Jerry, let's go ahead and do that. Let's roll the reel forward.
All right, let's move it forward a little bit.
Alright, so spoilers for A Good Day to Die Hard starting now. So, what was the fate of Alec, Jerry, our beloved villain?
Well, Alec gets shot. I mean, I can't say it's early on in the movie.
It felt early on.
But he never gets a chance to shine. And this is my first thing. This is my thing of if it's an action movie, if it is a revenge movie, if it's any movie where you gotta justify the hero's actions, where you're cheering somebody on, you've gotta have a really strong, unlikable villain. I mean, they have to be entertaining. They have to be enjoyable. I mean, usually the best villains are the ones that are more interesting than the hero.
Yeah.
Think of the Joker.
Absolutely.
Think of
Magneto. Magneto's a
what's
big
his
one
name?
For me.
Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, think of
Javier Bardem.
Yeah, Javier Bardem's character in Skyfall.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of ways he's more interesting than Bond.
When you have that villain that pushes the hero to the limit so much, and you have an iconic performance to kind of overshadow the hero.
Yeah.
You know, because obviously in most of these films, whether it's James Bond, John McClane, John Rambo, they're established heroes with a huge following, and when you have a villain who can come in and turn the dynamic on his head,
yeah,
that is very
T-1000, Terminator 2.
Absolutely.
Every scene he's in, Robert Patrick just steals it. And I think that's always a good mark of a good villain, is when they steal the scene, but then you have to not like them as well. I mean, there's something that you have to be able to look at them and say, okay, yeah, the hero has to take this guy out, you know?
And Jerry, all the previous Die Hard films had that.
They did. This movie had 2 potential characters who could have filled the role. Alec, Dancer, who we talked about to an extent, and then there's Irina, which is Komarov's daughter. She's played by a Russian model, Yulia Snegir. I think I'm probably not saying that right. She kind of reminded me, you see her early in the movie. She's the girl in the previews that, unzips her biking suit, or like
Kinda
leather.
scantily clad
Yeah,
girl.
her leather biking suit. So she was in a lot of the trailers. She kind of reminded me of like a young Xenia Onatopp from Goldeneye. She sort of was this, obviously, this Russian girl, but she was kind of sadistic at the beginning. There's a scene where some people are injured, and she's just kind of walking through shooting the people who are injured on the ground.
And Jerry, go ahead and get into the spoiler details of the plot with his daughter and Komarov.
Sure. So we talked about it earlier. You start off and you find out that, the whole setup of this plot that's going on is that Komarov is a political prisoner, that he has some kind of information on Shigarin. And Shigarin is trying to have Komarov killed or captured before Komarov can testify in court about what Shigarin has done. It turns out this evidence doesn't really exist the way Shigarin thinks it does, but both men have ties to the Chernobyl accident, the Chernobyl incident that happened. Both men were involved with it in some way and responsible for it.
So they were siphoning off uranium, which actually led to Chernobyl.
Happening. So anyways, when Jack McClane finally gets Komarov freed, Komarov doesn't want to leave the country without his daughter. They meet up with his daughter, who it turns out is now working for Shigarin and the bad guys. So they kidnap Komarov. They head off to Chernobyl to have Komarov open up this vault where this evidence supposedly is.
Absolutely.
But when you get there, turns out that Komarov has actually been orchestrating this thing the whole time. He has Shigarin killed. After shooting Alec, all of the men are actually working for Komarov, and Irina's working with him. So Komarov is really the main big baddie of the movie, and he's just not that interesting of a character.
And when the betrayal happened, did you really feel much? I didn't.
The first time when you realize it's his daughter betraying him, I was kind of like, oh man, that I kind of felt it coming, but I felt bad for him because they sort of played off as a real meek character. But later on,
when Komarov actually, saw that he betrayed.
Yeah.
Everyone, it was like, who
whatever,
really...
maybe it'll make things more interesting.
And there really was no evidence. It was just some weapon-grade uranium that they were planning, that Komarov and his daughter were planning on selling.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's my whole thing. All right, I think they have some epic stuff to play with here, but it never is fully realized. Chernobyl, when you bring up that event, it brings up a lot of emotions and memories for a lot of people. It brings up, as far as nuclear energy goes, it opens a whole Pandora's box, and that is a very historical backdrop to play off of. So you have that there, and we have this weapons-grade uranium, and my problem with that whole thing is all right, they're just going to sell their uranium. So we kind of have, in none of the previous Die Hard movies does John McClane have to deal with a nuclear threat.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the first time a nuclear threat has been introduced in a Die Hard movie. And throughout this whole movie, is there any threat of any kind of nuclear launch or anything like that? No, it's just about money, which I know most of the Die Hard villains, their primary reasoning behind the reason they do what they do is for cash. But how cool would it have been to see John and Jack McClane have to deal with the potential nuclear threat?
Yeah, I mean, there was an opportunity to really go over the top, to really do something new.
It was a doorway to up the ante from Live Free or Die Hard.
Exactly, and that's what you usually have to do in most action movies. Most movies in general, I mean, sometimes I know we think it borders on the ridiculous, but if you don't make the stakes bigger, there's not a lot of point. It's kind of like that story model. Your hero has to conquer a small challenge, and then a medium challenge, and then a big challenge, and then a huge challenge. And if you have a hero go from conquering something huge to doing something small, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you sort of feel deflated in a way. Like the hero has
especially
regressed.
when you, not just that, but you go to a smaller situation and you make the character interactions less interesting.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You
Yeah.
know, you got to have one or the other.
And I think that takes us to the next point, which is John McClane's interactions with his son. That's the catalyst for McClane's part in this story.
That's the catalyst for the whole film.
Yeah, his part is that he wants to reunite with his son. I mean, they're strange. In the last movie, we saw him reunite with Lucy.
Mary Elizabeth
Winstead. And we see that she's back in this movie.
Which was one of my favorite parts of this
Exactly.
movie.
It was good. I mean, it's nice to see her. I think it nicely ties that John is trying to come back. He's trying to be the family man that he never was.
And it brings a good continuity to the franchise.
It does. It feels like things have connected from the last movie to this one. I liked Jay Courtney. I thought he was a really good pick to play Jack McClane. I thought him and Bruce Willis had some really good chemistry together. I think the script was really bad most of the time.
Yeah, they didn't have the benefit of the lines that Shane Black provided Riggs and Murtaugh.
Yeah, they didn't have the benefit. I honestly, I don't know whose fault that is. I don't know if it's the writer's fault. I don't know if it's the director's fault. I don't know if it's Bruce Willis's fault, because he's always usually so good at dialogue. I mean, rarely do you watch a movie and say, Bruce Willis's dialogue wasn't very good, but some of the lines were really just obnoxious. I mean, there was some funny interaction, between him and his son, but sometimes he just looked at John McClane and said, no wonder your kid hates you. I mean, some of the stuff he said to him was just, like, I don't even know, mean's not the right word, but just obnoxious. Like, the first half of the movie, I felt like John McClane, the action star, was like the pesky sidekick, which, I mean, I know his son was the one who was on the mission, but still, you shouldn't be looking at your main action star and saying, gosh, he sure feels like the little pesky tag-along that, the hero has to watch out for all the time.
And what you bring up that about Bruce Willis. Now, Bruce Willis and Kevin Smith kind of revealed this after the filming of Cop Out. Bruce Willis has a tendency, he is a great actor, but he has a tendency to be a lazy actor. Mm-hmm. In modern times, I'm not talking about the first couple Die Hards or anything like that, just in more modern movies, like, hey, I'm Bruce Willis, I can show up and be Bruce Willis, and I don't really have to put in an effort. Kevin Smith talked about in the commentary and some of the extras for Cop Out, is like they tried to get Bruce Willis to run across the street in the scene. He's like, I'm not running, I'm walking. And, as a die-hard Bruce Willis fan, no pun intended, that kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but I'm just wondering if maybe, has he gotten a little lazy with this franchise? Hey, we're going to put the Die Hard name on it. People are going to come. They're going to come to see Yippee-Ki-Yay. They're going to come to see John McClane. And this movie did well. It made $29.3 opening weekend and around $38 million if you include Valentine's Day.
I think it's doing well in other countries, too. I mean, American action movies do well in other countries. It's one of the big things.
When you see a Willis or a Stallone in a different country, they kind of almost have the same draw they had in the 80s. Here, still over there, they have that same draw.
I was reading this interview with Dolph Lundgren, and he was talking about, they were asking him, well, you haven't done many you haven't done many big action movies in years since, prior to the Expendables. And he said, no, but you can go over to these, small countries, like a lot of South American countries, I guess he was doing it in. You go over there and they'll film these movies with like all extras dirt cheap. They'll make these like generic action movies with one big actor, like Dolph Lundgren or something.
That they will release direct to DVD over here.
And they'll be wildly successful in other countries.
Like Universal Soldier.
Yeah, like Universal Soldier 8 or, whatever they're working on now.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. So, yeah, I mean, this movie's doing really well in foreign markets, too. So.
And, as long as that keeps happening, we'll get to see, hopefully more Die Hard movies. Bruce Willis has already said they're working on Die Hard 6, and at this point, I don't know whether to say please stop, don't tarnish the legacy of the franchise any further, but or I say please God make Die Hard 6, because this franchise can't go out like this. To me, Die Hard 4 would have been the perfect note to go out on, because we see John McClane face a 21st century threat. It's cyber warfare, which is talked about ad nauseum in our news today. And it's like, before that was even a prominent topic in our news and a prominent threat to our nation, or we realized it was, John McClane was already dealing with that.
I know. It made me feel good that he was out there.
Yeah.
Just knowing that he's out there somewhere.
But that would have been kind of the perfect note to go out. Instead, we go back to half-hearted nuclear Chernobyl story.
My thought is that this probably contradicts everything that I said earlier. With action movies, you're always having to escalate things. If the one threat is a bank robbery, the next threat has to be like a small invasion or something. If it's a small invasion, next maybe has to be a world war. A lot of these action movies or movies in this vein have been going back and making the later movies a more personal, smaller story.
Yeah.
John Rambo, the fourth Rambo movie. It's a smaller, more personal movie.
But that actually felt like a Rambo movie.
It felt like a Rambo movie, but it's a smaller, more personal movie. Rocky Balboa. Smaller, more personal than, Rocky IV, which is like
international.
Yeah, and international, the epitome of the series. But Rocky Balboa is a great movie. I wonder if this wasn't what they were going for. Was trying to make a more, a smaller, more personal movie that you're like, okay, there's these guys out there, but the really big challenge is John McClane and his son learning to be family. But it just didn't. If that was what they were trying to do, it didn't gel.
But to pull that off, you have to have characters, specifically villains that we care about, and you have to have a very tight, well-written script. And just A Good Day to Die Hard didn't have that. I did think it was kind of a cool scene. At the very end, Komarov goes off the side of the building, and they kind of harken back to that, Hans Gruber
getting knocked off
scene.
The building. Yeah, a little nod there.
And instead of him falling to his death, he falls through the blade of a helicopter where he's completely diced into little pieces.
Yeah.
And I won't say it was in poor taste. I think it was more in poor taste of, Jerry, why redo that iconic scene?
Part of it is, are there that many ways to have someone fall off a building? But I think they definitely were intending for you to think about.
That was the first thing I thought about.
Yeah, I did too. That's what I leaned over to my wife and said, "Oh, that's like Hans Gruber in Die Hard." Sometimes it's little nods like that. If the movie's really great, we probably would have thought, "How awesome is it that they had this little nod to Die Hard?" But when the movie's bad, it just makes you think, oh, yeah, that was a better movie.
You didn't really care about Komarov enough for that scene to have any impact the way it did with Hans Gruber in the first Die Hard.
This movie was by the numbers. It felt like a by the numbers generic action movie.
It was very formulaic.
If his name weren't John McClane in this movie, I don't know that you would. You could probably just pass it off as another.
You could put Jason Statham in this movie and
it could have been Bruce Willis in this movie, and if it weren't a Die Hard movie, if it wouldn't have been John McClane, it wouldn't have felt like a Die Hard movie. So
absolutely not. Is there anything else you want to say about A Good Day to Die Hard?
Well,
Jerry?
I will say there's one of the things to me that is the hallmark, and that's a tough thing. Tough thing is nailing down what is the feel of the movie, because people talk about the Die Hard feel. Some people it was, John McClane has to be trapped in a certain situation. One of the biggest things that I think is that the Die Hard movies have always shown that John McClane is intelligent. He's a thinker. He uses his wit, he uses his intelligence, he uses his environment, and he uses all of those aspects of his character to overcome, more villains. He's usually like the one guy by himself, and so he has to overcome them using all the tricks and all the, thinking and all the planning.
He's very good at improvising, thinking on his head.
Thinking on his feet.
Excuse me.
Yeah, he's thinking on his head in this movie. No, this one didn't ever feel like that. Like he was really, there was some improvising. There's like one scene in the middle of the movie where, they're having a gunfight and he shoots the ceiling. It's a glass ceiling, and he like kind of ducks down, shoots the ceiling, and the glass falls, and it's like all over, and it's, piercing these guys. Like one guy's got glass coming out of his head. That was a cool scene. That felt to me like a, like a Die Hard, like a proper John McClane moment where he's using everything to his advantage.
That type of thing, like the car in the elevator, the police car into the helicopter, the semi-truck, that it was Die Hard 4, Live Free or Die Hard, was filled with those things. Yeah, they may have been over the top, but they were there.
All these huge group of people are all, working against him, and John McClane's just finding ways to, constantly get the upper hand.
That's just like the first one.
That's the element. That's the Die Hard feel, is that there's a whole group of these, German, I know they're really not terrorists, but they're disguising themselves as German terrorists in the first movie. And he's using little tricks. When he sends the guy down with, ho, 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 now I have a machine gun. Okay, so he's done a little bit of stuff, and he's overcome them. He's constantly, building himself up and putting himself in a better position. I would say John McClane's strategy is like a game of chess. He's constantly just moving his pieces against their pieces and getting himself into a position where he can win. This movie felt just like a shoot 'em up.
Felt more like a game of checkers.
Yeah, it felt like a game of checkers. He's just running through and just taking people over, and there wasn't a lot of thought to it.
And it's very disappointing because both you and I, this was one of our most eagerly anticipated films of 2013. In closing, I just want to say, I think we both agree that, I stated this at the beginning of the review. When you put the Die Hard name, we expect to see a very dynamic, action movie. So you can't expect to put a generic piece of action, I won't say crap, but very lower quality, action movie out there and expect fans or critics to like it. At Rotten Tomatoes, which is not always the best judge, which is why we try to provide a more common man's reviews on our site. It's 12% on Rotten Tomatoes.
If you look at what they call like the viewers poll, it's like 80% or 82 or something.
So viewers are actually digging it, I guess.
I guess so.
But fans of the franchise who I've talked to, a lot of my friends are big Die Hard fans. Me and Jerry might be the biggest, but they didn't like it. Even though, and one of my friends in particular was like, "Oh, I'm excited. I think we're gonna get into a more intimate, kind of scaled down movie to harken back to the first one."
Could be great if they would have done it right.
And I think, like you said, they were trying for it, but ultimately,
didn't happen.
They didn't pull it off.
I'm interested. My star rating was 3 out of 5, and I know 2.5 is like would technically be the average of the star rating, but 2.5 is going to be a movie where I was really like, okay, there are a lot of times where I wanted to get out of this movie. I never wanted to get out of the movie. I never felt like it was horrible or I was bored, but I gave it a 3 because it, to me, was just pretty bland, pretty average. So I went with 3 stars.
Well, what I went with, and I hate giving half a stars, but I did go with the 2.5 here. If it was a generic action movie that I just happened to stumble upon in a matinee or at home, from a Blockbuster or a Netflix, I would have probably gave it a 3.5. But when you put the Die Hard name on it, I expect a little more. So I'll say, sorry, for this story of John McClane, we will say 2.5. That's my opinion. But we can only. Are you hoping for Die Hard 6?
Yeah, I'm hoping for Die Hard 6.
Just to have another Die Hard, so we can kind of, give this this franchise, just to go out on a great note?
I'll say both. I mean, I know these days it's a really big, hip thing to say someone killed a franchise, but, if they make a Die Hard 6 and it's not good,
it's not going to diminish the first four.
Doesn't diminish the first four at all for me.
It's like Rocky 5. It's there. Does that take away my enjoyment of the rest of the Rocky films? Absolutely not. They're still all great.
And Rocky Balboa.
Movies.
He came back and made one of the best movies.
That is a great point, Jerry Reed. Perhaps, and we can only hope that Die Hard 5 is like Rocky 5, the one off note in the franchise, and we can hope for one redemption movie. Maybe they'll just call it Die Hard John McClane.
That's what they need to do.
Yes.
Just John McClane, the name of the movie, John McClane.
Yeah, like Rocky Balboa.
Or John Rambo.
Yeah, like that would be good. That may piss Stallone off a little bit, but I think Willis and Stallone are tight enough. I said piss him off a little bit because he had Rambo and then Rocky Balboa. He kind of had that one name thing.
The originally they wanted to call Godfather Part 3 The Death of Michael Corleone.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not.
That was an original intention.
Interesting tidbit that you will find on the Confirmed Epic podcast. I think that's just about going to wrap us up for this edition of the Confirmed Epic podcast and our thoughts on A Good Day to Die Hard. Jerry Reed, where can we find more of your stuff on the web this week?
Well, you can find more stuff on thepicreview.com, and of course you can find plenty of links to my action figure and Lego reviews on my Amazon.com page.
Check those Amazon reviews out, people. He does some great work on Amazon, some very in-depth reviews of some figures who otherwise don't get that great treatment they deserve. As for me, you can find all of my stuff on Twitter at The Real Brad Bell. That's TheReel, Brad Bell. And of course, you can find all of my work at theepicreview.com. That's thepicreview.com. And our official Facebook page where we post breaking epic news daily. Just search Epic Review. And until next time, we are